Hello, welcome back to Be Creative. I have been trying to figure out how to incorporate more of my Tim Holtz products into my Dina Wakley mixed media stuff. It's a little tricky because the styles are very different, but it's doable. I mean, after all, Dina Wakley started that way. She just used Dilutions and Tim Holtz stuff, and she still was able to find her voice and her style. I'm like, if Dina can do it, by God, I can do it too. Admittedly, full disclosure, I was recently seduced by Tim Holtz's new Halloween release. They are super creepy, and while I don't particularly enjoy being creeped out, I couldn't resist. I thought, you know what? What a perfect way to try to blend these styles. So I have a 5x7 gel press plate that I have started by laying down just some white paint because I want some white space on my tag after I gel plate, and I don't want to have to go back in and add that later. So I have some of her scribble stick sets. That is set number 2, and I'm doing the traditional old scribble stick on the gel plate technique. I am holding that stick down in the water for a good old 10 or 15 seconds. Clearly I've even just forgotten it there and just let it sit and soak. And I'm starting to pull some prints. I'm not going to pull very many because I don't want too many choices. I'll get like, I don't know, sometimes if you have too many choices, then you just can't make any decisions. So I only have 3 tags, and I'm just adding more and more scribble stick and more water. As more water gets added to the gel plate, the acrylic paint gets a little bit looser, and now I'm starting to get some of the more loosey effects that I want. I'm only using one color of scribble stick, and that is Night. And you can see it's actually not as dark in the scribble stick form as it is in the paint, and I was okay with that. I did really quickly switch over to Marine. I wanted to see if I could get like just a little bit of color variant, but as you'll see here very shortly, that didn't work. I only did that once, and then I was kind of like, F it, I'm just going to move on. So I have my 3 tags. Again, I don't want too many choices, so I'm going to go ahead and clean off the plate and pull a print. I'm actually going to hang on to that print though, because I'm going to wind up using it to create my focal point later. That was not planned. I basically just grabbed it and was like, why not? So I have my 3 tags and a Tim Holtz stencil. That's an old one. Be sure to check the description box below for a list of the full supplies. It was actually just sitting on my desk. It was the first one I grabbed. And I have some gloss sprays that I have sprayed on. And now I'm doing a Dina Wakley technique where I'm using the stencil as a stamp. And I love this. I love that super messy, distressed look that you get. But it's in that really bright Dina Wakley color. So it's just, I don't know, it's just really pretty. I liked it. So now I have my finished backgrounds. I'm going to pick the background that I'm actually the least attached to, because most of it's going to get covered up, and the other tags I'm going to use for future projects. Now, this part of the tag was totally inspired by an Instagram TV video. I think that's what it's called, that I found on Instagram. Sorry, that was totally redundant. Anyway, it was inspired by an Instagram video from Scraposaurus, and she had stamped this particular stamp over vellum, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love that. That stamp is super creepy. I have big plans for that stamp. I can totally see some alcohol lift ink in its future. Oh, it's going to be fantastic. And it's crazy because I don't even do Halloween. Like I said earlier, I don't like to be creeped out, but I just loved it. Anyway, I'm sorry, I was rambling. I stamped it on vellum with StazOn ink because StazOn works best on vellum, but I need to set it to the side to dry so that I don't touch it and smear it, because it will take a little bit to dry on vellum. Now I have some Dina Wakley acrylic paint in Penny, and I'm using another Tim Holtz stencil that was just laying on my desk. There's really no rhyme or reason to anything that I'm picking. The first thing that my fingers touched. But I'm like, hey, why not? Who says I can't use paint that is not Tim Holtz through one of his stencils? Nobody says that. Just, you know what? Do what you want, which is what I do pretty much all the time. Penny was a deliberate choice, however, because that blue is such a pretty shade of blue. I didn't want a hard cheddar to complement it, but I also didn't want to do like a brown either. And Penny is that nice, like brassy color. It just, I don't know, I thought it worked really well. I do want a little bit more contrast though in my focal point, so I've grabbed another random stencil on my desk, sprayed some Cheddar gloss spray through it, and I'm just stamping off with the Dina Wakley technique again. That tag is going to make a badass background for a future project. I'm already excited about it. Once that is good and dry, I'm going to use one of the moths from the Tim Holtz stamp set. Again, this part was also inspired by Scraposaurus's Instagram video, and I'll put a link to that below. Even though we went into totally different directions, her tag is absolutely beautiful, and we would not have this without that inspiration. So thank you, Scraposaurus, on the off chance that you see this, which you probably won't. So now I have my focal point cut out, and I'm going to start assembling all my collage elements. It's actually really funny because I went through all that trouble to add that color into that focal point, and I didn't even wind up using that part of the frickin' moth. You know what? I don't know. Blame it on the process. You guys understand. You know how it is, and it just happens. So I did notice though that I was losing some of the detail in that stamped on vellum when I just placed it right over the background. So I have grabbed a piece of, I know this, I was so excited to finally use this dictionary paper. I have a medical dictionary that I got at the thrift store, and I never use it because it never freaking fails. I will lay it down for collage, and then I'll cover everything up, but there will always be this one random word that you can still see, and it's usually like hemorrhoids or urinary tract infection or something like that. It's like it just never fails. I have this beautiful sentiment that says something like be bold, be creative, and then right next to it is hemorrhoids. So I never use it, but it was perfect for this stamp set because all of the new stamps are like skeletons, and it's like this super medical theme, and I was like, finally, now is your time, random dictionary. Now is your time. I do, however, want to make sure that I keep this kind of mixed media-ish and aligning with, you know, the Dina Wakley style. So I have some of her Just Words collage paper. I absolutely love this collage paper. I think it's the best out of all of her collaged paper releases. You probably just play a drinking game with how many times I just said collage paper. So I'm just layering that over top of some of that dictionary paper to keep the same type of style flowing through. Now I am going to lay down that vellum. Now I don't want to glue this down because that just gets tricky and messy and it takes forever to dry. So I'm going to use my tiny attacher, and I'm just going to randomly staple it down. I don't particularly care if you can see the staples because that still kind of fits into the theme of the tag. Now you can see that I'm trying to place my focal point. I have since cut it in half, and I'm not even, like I said earlier, I'm not even using the colorful side of the moth. If you're watching from home though, and you're like, that doesn't really have enough contrast to it, you know what, I agree, unknown YouTube viewer. So what I've decided to do was take a piece of typical dictionary paper that I use. It's a brown too, which is going to throw in a little bit of neutrals into this, and a previously cut out circle. How many times have you guys seen that circle, right? Yeah, I love it. I just gloss spray through the circle stencil, and then I cut them out. So that's how I'm going to get in some of that contrasting element. It probably would have been simpler to just use the other side of the moth, which is what I had originally planned. But, you know, again, we just changed things up mid-game. It's like I call it an audible. Yeah, there's a good football reference for you because football season started. Go Bears! So I am adding this random stamp. It's more of a medical themed because, as I said earlier, a lot of his new stamps are medically aligned. And I really wanted to kind of give the impression that maybe this tag was, you know what, I'm trying to tell a story with the tag. I'm trying something new. So this is how it was in my head. This tag is like in somebody's medical journal, and the moth is like going to kill somebody. It's toxic. And maybe the effect that it has is on the skeleton in the background. That's what I was going for. And I found that all of the stamps in his new stamp sets perfectly aligned with that little story that I made up in my head. So the collection of specimens, it is number 3616, and I'm going to add the toxic label. That's some of his new label tape that came out with the ideology release for this. And again, it was perfect. It was perfect. If you're not familiar with his label tape though, you do want to use like a heavy glue. I always use gel medium, and then I usually have to wind up sitting something on top of it. Hence what you're seeing right here, to hold it down while it dries, because it is kind of thick and it can be tricky to glue. But here's our finished tag. It's a little different than what I normally do, but I had a lot of fun. Alright guys, as always, thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Hey, here's some more videos that you might like, and please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button so that you can see more of my content.